All right, so here's environmental.
Can you see if I shared it correctly?
We cannot see your screen, but I can share if you want me
I
to.
mean, on the platform.
Oh, on the platform. All right, let me pull it up.
I can also share, but I just want to see if I shared correctly.
Yeah, let me
I
check and
mean,
see.
submit it. I can share here in the meantime.
Let's see, this is environmental lab report. I don't see it on LTP that you submitted it under the environmental lab report or presentation. Do you know where you submitted it?
Okay, I will check it again
Was
now.
it on
Just
Google
give me
Classroom or on LTP?
LTP, and I actually bought, but I
Okay.
can recheck again. Let me just share my screen now.
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
I
All
put it
right,
on
Loyal, you want to
LTP.
talk? Then I can talk later, maybe.
Yeah. Um, so I'll be honest, I didn't really remember everything. I thought I remembered everything, but we didn't really make a presentation. I assumed we were just going to talk about our lab report, and so that's kind of what we have here.
No problem.
Um, so I basically made my lab report, and Zafir made his lab report, and we kind of just combined them. And the parts that didn't, uh, that we could just talk about and collaborate on, we kind of did. That's pretty much the discussion part at the end. So the video starts with talking about the Horizon oil spill, and the whole video goes into all the information you really have to know, absorber and boom and everything that the whole topic is about. And so my beginning just says that we tried to replicate or try to simulate the oil spill that was from the Horizon oil disaster, and we had to try to contain it and eliminate as much oil as we possibly could. And so you could use whatever that you had for containment, tinfoil string, shoestring. Um, your recovery could be a sponge, syringe, or a cotton ball. And he acted as a skimmer, absorber, or adsorber. So we kind of just talked about what we wanted to do. He chose his stuff, I chose my stuff, and we just did the experiment, and then we had to redo the experiment using a dispersant. That's pretty much how I began my part. You want me to go my whole part and then Zafir, or my intro, his intro, or what?
I mean, whichever you guys want. I get. I mean, at the intro, it's probably pretty similar. Um, so why don't we, Zafir, add anything you want to the intro, and then when y'all get to your different methods, you can each talk about how effective your methods were.
Yeah, we just saw the materials and we pick which is available, to reach us for like in our home to use. We pick the materials and yeah, the same problem we work on. So as you said, I don't need to mention again. And then okay, let me continue with my method. I used these are the materials I used, and the plastic band is missing here. Yeah, I don't know if you can see. I'm holding in my hand.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I just separated here is trail 1, 2, 3, 4 under the pictures, to match with the sentences. And the first I used only the oil, of course, with water and sponge, and I used the strobe just to push and collect the oil.
Can you scroll
And
down a little bit? I think we're still seeing just the intro paragraph from Lloyd. I don't know if,
really,
yeah, I don't know if you've got a
Mm,
picture or if you're pointing to
yeah,
something.
on my screen it's the pictures right now. Let me stop
I
share
think you
and
were
share
maybe
again.
sharing just the actual presentation or the thing as opposed to sharing your whole screen.
Okay. What about now?
Ah, yes. Perfect.
Okay. All right. And then I use straw for both methods to to push and collect the oil at one side of the glass. And that's the sponge here I used how to absorb the oil. And the second one, which looks really different when the soap is added. So the challenge here, the biggest problem here when we add the soap, as you see, it breaks into smaller droplets, and which makes more difficult, very difficult actually, to get the oil from the surface, either from by using the straw, by using the rubber, I'm sorry, or the sponge. So I give 3 and 2, which is last point for which after the dispersant added. And here are the reflections. And I think I forgot to add here, but I can say I think I rushed a little bit during the experiment because I just wait a couple of minutes and try to do each methods. But when I came here, like after a couple of hours, or maybe the next morning, I don't remember. I really noticed that the oil is really collected at on the surface of the water, which is easier to get to the oil from the surface. And and then after I started thinking, because in nature, in real life, we need to be quick, right, to get the oil from the water, ocean, whatever, the sea. So this is a big challenge, I think, for the engineers, because they need to be quick, but they also need time. This is a big challenge.
Yeah, that's a great observation.
Leo, that's Leo's experiment.
All
Yeah,
right. Can I try to share the document so I can talk
yeah,
about it without
of
having to
course,
rely on
of course,
here? Let me see.
of
I,
course.
I changed computers hopefully so I can share.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Let's see this one. See this one? Let's see. Can y'all see?
Yes.
So you see me moving it?
Yes.
Okay. Um, so as far as brainstorming goes, we just pretty much said, let's pick what you want and there you go. That's pretty much what your teammates should be doing. Y'all just say, okay, let's use this, this, and this and see how things differ. And so I had syringe and I had cotton balls with a tinfoil boom. That's the syringe I use right here. And that's my 6 milliliters I had to put in. So I didn't get a good picture. I don't know what you can see, but I can show up to the camera. I use this big old, I mean, that's what I kind of thought of for a shadow box that I can kind of get not very wide, but it's it's good enough, I think. Um, so I put in my oil and then I started using this syringe to try to suck it back up. And L2 here is what I ended up with, which it pretty much was about 5 milliliters. And out of the six, that would have gotten me a score of 4 for how well it did. And then I tried the cotton ball and the boom. Well, L4 here is what I got. Now, I kind of think part of that was because the oil seemed to kind of stick to the boom and it was hard to get off. And every time I used the cotton ball, it sucked up water and I was getting more water than oil. And so I think I just wasn't getting oil very well, which is that particular cotton ball and the boom I used. And then a question I have is when we add the dispersant, are we supposed to mix it around or just add this soap and say, okay, I added it and what? That was my question. Do I just add this soap on top of the oils and then squish it around, or just add the dish soap and leave it? What should we do?
Well, so either way can work, and I think you can experiment, have your students experiment, with different ways. I think in the real world, they're going to put the dispersant in, and then it's going to, typically this is going to be in a body of water where there would be movement. So it would have
Hmm.
some kind of movement, but you're not necessarily going to be, like shaking it like, really robustly. So I would say,
Yeah.
to simulate it most to the real world would be to drop it in and maybe like give it a little stir to simulate the movement of water that is like actually like dispersing it, but not to like put the lid on the Tupperware and like shake it. And
Yeah.
if you do end up getting like a ton of bubbles on the top, I would maybe like give it a second to settle. Because the bubbles are not so much what we want. It's just that breaking down of the oil. But if your kids ask you that question, you can say, I don't know, try it.
Okay.
There's not necessarily a right or a wrong way. But I would say generally less bubbles, but like kind of an equal dispersing of the soap throughout the water would be the goal.
All right. So L5 and L6 here were my pictures of doing it all over again with the dispersant. And if you look at L5, it's pretty cloudy, my oil, and there's some bubbles on top. But I think I got just as much, if not more. And it's hard. I said this in my discussion. I don't know if that's just it looks like it's more, and it's just got together some soapiness with the oil, but it looks like it did pretty well. And I think part of that is because I had a syringe which I could suck up and even maybe get some oil that went down below the surface. I don't know how a skimmer is really going to go below the surface much, but it could create a suction that brings below water up. So I gave it a pretty much the same thing, a good score of 4. Um, and then L6 here was my cotton experiment again, and it looks like it got just about the same amount. It's still foamy, so I gave it a same score of 2. I got about half of what I thought. I mean, I originally started with. So the two methods were one was better than the other, and that's what I said in my answer that the skimmer was better than just the absorbent. But I also think because of the type of absorbent and type of materials I used that it wasn't much better. And in the end, um, when we discussed the end results here, I said that well, we both kind of came together and talked about it, and it might have been that if we would have used something like hair, because the hair is an adsorber, it wouldn't have gotten the water with the oil itself. So that's something that was something we could redo, and if we're going to do it all over again. Overall, I said that my syringe skimmer was better than my cotton ball of absorber tinfoil method. Um, since you might know, I'm just wondering, is tinfoil like is it attractive oil or is it just normal for the oil like oil to stick to booms?
Yeah, so it depends on what material is used, right? But I think that when they're designing real booms out in the world, they want the oil to stick to it so that it doesn't, skip, go out underneath it or escape. So they would want it for sure to absorb and then to hopefully not absorb a ton of water either, um, so that it doesn't get bogged down and super heavy. So.
One question just for me because I'm a math person. If you see on my screen, I said I got between 5 and 6 milliliters of oil. Is that
Yeah.
okay to write, or you just
Perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Yeah. So, my really precise people, my math people, sometimes struggle with this because it isn't very precise. And so most of the ways, I don't know how you did it with your cotton balls, but like people will take the cotton and like use it and then they kind of wring it out into a beaker, right?
that's
To
what I
like,
did.
yeah, to try to, basically say, okay, I use the cotton ball. Let me
I have it.
wring it out. And as you wring it out, yeah, there you go, as you wring it out, you're wringing out as much as you can of like the oil and the water. And obviously, like some stays in the cotton ball, but you do the best that you can. One thing that both of you guys mentioned, or I think Zafir mentioned it and then you kind of alluded to it, Lloyd, is the like waiting to see what happens the next day, right? So maybe all those foam bubbles. So I think that the foam bubbles that you saw is not really that much oil, right? If you were to did the bubbles go away and did you get less oil?
Well, this is the second one. It's still there.
It's still there.
Um,
Okay, your bubbles are still there. Interesting. I would have thought that the
yeah.
dish soap bubbles would have gone. So
No, not for me at least.
yeah, really interesting. I love that. So you can kind of, if you're able to kind of leave some things set up, right, then you can have a discussion of like, well, what happens if you leave it? But then exactly what Zafir said, like in the real world, you can't wait 3 days for whatever to settle and to, you know, be be less turbulent because by then your oil's already 100 miles downstream and you haven't been able to contain the oil spill. So, I mean, real world application for sure. Really good execution here. I think it's definitely, the conversation is relativity as opposed to absoluteness. And depending on the size of your container, so I think the container that Lloyd showed is kind of more what schools tend to have because it's just like a typical like container box, but it definitely works in a smaller cup. So you could actually even like reuse the petroleum engineering containers if you do end up buying these. So you can use all sorts of different containers, but kind of the wider your container is, the easier it is to like create a boom or to create more creative things. When you have a really narrow top, and it's only this big, it's really hard to like skim with a spoon or skim with or to put a boom because the oil is already basically contained, right? I mean, when your opening is only this big, the walls of your container are actually kind of helping to contain the oil spill. So I would definitely recommend a wider container if you have it. I mean, even like a Pyrex dish or probably even a cookie sheet, honestly. That might be a little shallow. Um, but lots of different implementations, but it is more of a relative comparison as opposed to an absolute comparison because you can't really get everything out. And then what you should see is kind of well, so Lloyd, I'm really surprised by that your bubbles are still there because I would have expected a lot less oil, but both of you guys I think found generally that when you add the dispersant, it's harder to skim and it's harder to get them off the top. And so as you watch the presentation, it talks about that basically the first methods used in an oil spill cleanup are contain and then skim, and then dispersants are used as kind of a last step measure once you're down to just like the tiny little bits of oil that you can no longer easily skim off. Now you have to disperse it and then the little fish eat the oil, which is what everyone gets very upset about with an oil spill cleanup, which it has a lot of good discussion points. So this is one project that can get a little dicey in terms of like the ethics. This one in petroleum, I feel like some teachers have very strong opinions about, whether we should be fracking for oil and whether, we should be using dispersants, which can harm fish. So there's lots of really good conversations that you can have to enhance this conversation, to just weigh the pros and cons, right, of the different methods and the different implications, and to be aware that, everything has a consequence, right? And so, um, definitely some really good conversations to be ready to have with your students to take this kind of to the next level.
I want to add something,
Yeah.
Vanessa, quick. I think the size of the container we use also up to what materials we use. So for example, I use like a glass,
Mhm.
Hold on, let me remove the background quick. Mhm.
Mhm.
All right. So the glass, which is thinner than layouts, big container. but it was more difficult for me when I used the sponge. Maybe I may cut it into two, or when I use this plastic, you
Hmm.
know, it was really hard for me to, you see, I don't have
Exactly.
enough space. So maybe the
Exactly.
size of the container is also up to what materials are you using to get the oil.
Yeah, for sure. And so I would definitely recommend, something wide, something with a wide top. I mean, at the very least, like a standard like Tupperware container, like let's see. Like even something just like this, like a regular like lunch Tupperware, right? Where you can at least skim or do
Yeah,
something.
work easily.
Yeah, it would be a little
Mhm.
bit better than a like a cup sized thing. So the wider the better. And again, this is stuff like these types of containers, not everyone has to have the same container too. So like you can ask the kids like how many times do kids get takeout, right? And it comes in some plastic container that's going to go into a landfill. So have them bring it in and use that as their oil spill cleanup. And then the great part about that is then you can throw them away and you don't feel quite so bad because you've reused it at least once, so and then that can feed into an environmental conversation as well. So ask the kids to collect to-go containers that are like hard-sided plastic, like a sushi container. Sometimes they come in those, big hard plastic things. So um, great opportunity to reuse those. Um, cool. Yeah, so I think you guys found the natural conclusions of the project that basically there's going to be different methods. There's no right or wrong for the types of methods or what materials work better. Different implementations have worked well in some classrooms, and in other classrooms, the kids have been less successful using essentially similar materials. Um, but it's really about the creativity and coming up with, what you want to use and maybe why you think. I think that that's an important piece in that brainstorming to say like why would like why would I want to use tinfoil in a cotton ball? Okay, I want the tinfoil to contain the oil and I want the cotton ball to soak it up. In the syringe method, I'm going to use the syringe to pull it from the top. And, an advantage to the syringe is that when I syringe it up, the oil is contained within the syringe. For the cotton ball, one of the real life risks would be, well, it gets so full of water that it sinks to the bottom, right? So thinking about that. So maybe you put the cotton ball on a spoon and you kind of move the cotton ball in the water on the spoon so that the cotton ball doesn't get so heavy that it sinks to the bottom. And so part of the brainstorming is thinking about, why some of the combinations might be better than others for different reasons, right? One, you think, well, I think this might be the most effective, but maybe I'm using the most material to do this, so it could be more costly. So, there's just all sorts of threads that you can pull on this to get the kids to think about the real world application and how that might happen. And so if your kids do use a cotton ball or something and it does sink to the bottom, before they just stick their fingers in and pull it out, right? You might want to say, like, well, that just went to the bottom of the ocean, right? And now you can't get it. How are you going to recover that? So that can be documented as one of their trials as like, we got zero oil and we contributed to putting something in the ocean that shouldn't be there. Um, Great. Awesome job on those projects. Appreciate that. Any questions for our environmental group? All right. Great. Before we close out, did y'all have any like tips or tricks or thoughts about a resource that was missing, a clarification that you needed, or any tips for the teacher that you were like, this is what I came across? Anything to share on that note? Or was it all pretty straightforward?
The only thing I was thinking about, and that's what I'm worried about for me this year, is getting all the materials ahead of time and ordering it and all that stuff. But um, I might have four preps next year, and
Hey,
so
yeah.
yeah, that's just another burden for me. But at least two of them are other dual enrollments, so at least tests and such are taken care of for me. But that's what I was just worried about is getting all the materials at a time and
Yeah.
not being late on ordering them.
Yeah. So I really highly encourage you guys to rely on your students to bring stuff in. Not that they have to buy it, but like I said, to-go containers, spoons, you know how you get like a silverware set when you order takeout and it comes with like a spoon, a fork, and a knife, and how often do you actually use the spoon? Like be like, hey, for the next 6 months, save your spoons and bring them in. Like have the and then again, you can like then you don't have to store them, you don't have to keep them afterwards. Like you can kind of just like go or like if people want to bring in a box of Cheerios, that's one, or cereal, or like if their cereal goes stale, like or today or last week I bought my kids off-brand Cheerios, and God forbid they did not like off-brand Cheerios, so now I have a whole box of off-brand Cheerios that I put in a Ziploc and I labeled for the turtles because we're gonna go feed the turtles at the LSU lakes because they really like Cheerios. Don't know if that's good for them, but so if just let kids know ahead of time what is coming, and say like, hey, if you have any of these things laying around your house, like bring them in. So yeah.
Vanessa,
Yes,
what if they came up with like to use a different materials than
absolutely.
listed to solve the problem?
Absolutely. We always
Absolutely.
encourage creativity and for
Yeah.
them to bring in their own materials. If they say like, I got this, felt paper at home, and I think that would be good. Let me, for sure they can bring in anything that's allowable on school campus to try out.
Mm.
I mean, I had some kids did like uh I brush my cat, like a big old thing of cat hair. It looks like I have two cats after I'm done brushing my cat. And someone actually said that. They're like, "Can I bring in cat hair?" And I was like, "Well, that's kind of weird, but yeah, absolutely." So like they brought in a Ziploc of cat hair. I was like, "Do you need some more? I can go brush my cat." Um, but they thought that that would, it's like it was fluffy, and my cat, like he doesn't really get wet. Even when it rains, the water just kind of like sits on top of his fur. So, you know, it actually worked pretty well. And they put it, I forget how they contained it. I think they put it like inside a sock, maybe. So they used a sock and then had the cat hair. Anyway, absolutely come up with whatever crazy cool, or a stocking. They used a stocking. That's what it was because they thought the sock would absorb too much water. So they wanted to use like those nylon little stocking things. So yes, please, especially for this project, but really any project, if the kids want to bring in their own stuff, absolutely encouraged. So, all right, cool. Let me stop the recording.